Rosa Diaz is probably the last character on Brooklyn Nine-Nine who would want to be analysed. She gives very little, both in words and in expression. She is quiet, controlled, and difficult to read. This is a character who decides very carefully what the world gets to see. Rosa resists the idea of being understood. She redirects it. She makes you work for even the smallest insight, and then immediately pulls back again. So instead of a clear picture, you get fragments, moments of wholesome loyalty, sudden flashes of anger, the occasional glimpse of vulnerability that disappears almost as quickly as it arrives. We get the outline of someone who is deeply private, fiercely independent, and far more emotionally complex than she allows anyone to see. I think it's these qualities that make us love her so much, but they also leave us wanting more. So today I not only want to ask who is Rosa Diaz, but what can we learn from someone who refuses to answer that question? Rosa is a mystery. Details about her shift, stories contradict each other, even basic facts don't always line up, and at first it plays like a joke, a running gag that Rosa might have 10 different backstories and none of them can be verified. Her aliases, like the one she gives her neighbours. But the longer you sit with these inconsistencies, the less random they feel. There's a pattern to it all. If people don't have a clear version of you, they can't reduce you to one. So Rosa keeps things unsettled. She avoids being pinned down, and she gives just enough to function in the world, but never enough to be fully understood within it. And her maintaining this carries over into how she communicates. Rosa doesn't speak often, but when she does, it carries weight. She is the definition of says less means more, and there's no effort to soften what she does say or make it more palatable. Her words are brief and direct and final, but because of that people listen. She doesn't need long explanations. A short sentence, or sometimes even just a look, is usually enough. And that economy shifts the focus onto what isn't said. You start noticing the gaps, the timing, the way she chooses when to engage and when to stay silent. In a show where most characters fill space constantly, I'm looking at you, Jake, Rosa lets silence do the work, and over time that silence becomes part of how she's understood. But what makes that restraint interesting is that it doesn't mean she's detached from the people around her. Rosa isn't openly affectionate, and she doesn't perform care in obvious ways. She's not the person who reassures you with words or checks in repeatedly, but she is consistent, and I would argue that she is one of the most loyal characters in the show. When someone matters to her, she shows it through presence. It's a non-verbal solidarity, but she backs people, she protects them, she shows up when it counts. For me, you see this most clearly with Jake. Their friendship isn't built on constant emotional exchange, but there is a trust there that doesn't need to be spelled out. With Amy, there's a respect that develops slowly, almost reluctantly at first, and then settles into something solid. With the squad as a whole, Rosa becomes someone they rely on, even if she never frames herself that way. It's a form of loyalty that doesn't announce itself. We get brief glimpses of where Rosa comes from. There's a congestion and anxiety around communication. Conversations feel strained. Emotional openness doesn't come naturally, and when it's attempted, it doesn't always land well. The most famous example, of course, is when she comes out to her parents. The response isn't simple or supportive, it's complicated, uncomfortable, and unresolved for a long time. Now, it is probable that when she was a child, Rosa faced similar problems whenever she expressed her true self. This is more speculation on my part, but it does make sense, because if you grow up in an environment where expressing yourself leads to friction or misunderstanding, you learn to be very selective. You learn when to speak and when not to, and the lesson that you carry with you thereafter becomes, not everything needs to be shared, or in some cases, nothing needs to be shared. Rosa seems to have internalized that early. For me, this helps us to understand why she is so taciturn, but it explains something else about her, those moments where the control slips. When frustration breaks through, it's sharp and sudden. It leaves an impression. To me, these moments feel like pressure finding a release. If you're constantly managing what you show, it builds up. She is holding on to a lot, and every so often, it boils over. Beyond the mystery, beyond the restraint, Rosa Diaz is just capable. There's a level of competence to her that the show never even questions. She is prepared, observant, and almost always one step ahead. While other characters improvise or panic, Rosa already seems to have a plan, and if she doesn't, she adapts quickly without drawing attention to it. When Rosa is in a situation, you just trust that it's under control, and that extends to her physical presence as well. Rosa is one of the few characters in the show who feels genuinely dangerous, and I mean in a precise, controlled way. You get the sense that if something escalates, she can handle it. But what makes that side of her interesting is that it's never used to dominate the people around her. Rosa doesn't throw her weight around unnecessarily, she doesn't need to prove she's the toughest person in the room. We know full well she's tough, and that certainty carries into how she navigates the world more broadly. She doesn't tolerate nonsense. If someone says something stupid, she calls it out. If something is unfair, she doesn't let it slide. There's a directness to her that cuts through the noise, especially in a workplace environment where things could easily be brushed off or ignored. And that includes injustice, incompetence, or just general stupidity. And there's something satisfying about that because it's done without over-explaining or justifying. She doesn't need to argue her position at length. She moves through conversations with purpose, and that makes even her brief interactions feel sharper. At the same time, she isn't one-dimensional. Rosa works hard, but she also has moments where she lets go fully, usually in ways that catch people off guard. There's a sense that when she does engage with something, whether it's a mission or a friend, she commits to it completely. Rosa is one of the bravest characters in the show, but she isn't without fear. What Rosa fears is giving herself away. And I don't mean this in the usual sense, physically or emotionally. I mean it in a deeper way. The idea of being fully known, fully exposed with no control over what parts of her are seen and understood, which ties back to what we've said about her upbringing. And the show finds a surprisingly literal way to express that. Her fear of needles, well, specifically having her blood taken. On the surface it's played for comedy. Diaz, one of the toughest characters in the show, can handle violence, danger, interrogation, but struggles with something as routine as a blood test. But think about it. I mean, what is a blood test? It's invasive. It takes something from you that you can't control once it's gone. Your body is reduced to data, to something that can be analysed and understood without your permission beyond the initial moment. You are literally giving yourself away, and it's the opposite of everything Rosa tries to maintain. She controls what people know about her, and she decides how she is perceived. A blood test removes that control entirely. It takes something internal and makes it external. Something private becomes something examinable. It's exposure at the most literal level. It's a symbol. And for someone like Rosa, it's deeply uncomfortable because her entire identity is built around containment. She manages access and filters information. She decides what version of herself exists in the world at any given time. That control allows her to feel stable, independent, and protected. The idea of something being taken from her, something that represents her, without her being able to shape it or guard it, cuts against all of that. It's not really about the needle, it's about what the needle represents. And once you see that, a lot of her behaviour starts to align. Her reluctance to open up, her shifting backstory, her controlled relationships, her discomfort when things become too emotionally exposed. They all point to the same underlying instinct. Keep something for yourself. Don't let everything be known. Because once it is, you can't take it back. What makes this interesting is that the show doesn't fix this fear, not fully. Rosa doesn't suddenly become someone who is completely open or unguarded. She doesn't abandon that instinct, but she does, at times, choose to push against it. She lets people in, selectively. She shares part of herself when it matters. She allows moments of honesty, even when they clearly cost her something. Rosa isn't a character who fears danger. Well, maybe she is, it's just that Rosa's idea of danger isn't explosions, car chases, or gunfights. Her idea of danger is more like, well, giving herself away. Adrian Pimento, as well as being one of my favourite minor characters, is one of the few people Rosa allows to get close to her, at least romantically. And at first the relationship works because it doesn't follow normal expectations. It's chaotic, unpredictable, and intense, but it exists on its own terms. There's no pressure for it to look conventional or stable. With Pimento, Rosa learns what love is. But what stands out is that it doesn't last. In a lot of sitcoms, that kind of relationship would eventually settle into something permanent. Here it doesn't. They care about each other, but that isn't enough to make it sustainable long term. Even after everything they go through with Figgis, assassination attempts, incarceration, she doesn't stay just because there's history or feeling. She makes a decision that prioritizes her independence even when it's difficult. It reinforces something central to her character. Connection matters, but it doesn't override her sense of self. That independence runs through everything she does. She doesn't rely on approval. She doesn't adjust herself to be more acceptable. She doesn't explain her choices unless she decides it's worth it. Over time, that becomes more intentional, especially in the way she defines her place within the world around her. But deep down, I think the reason Rosa and Pimento didn't work out is because he is too similar to her. He doesn't add anything new to her life. He doesn't challenge her. Now, Jocelyn brings something into Rosa's life that isn't already there. She exists outside of intensity. Her world is steadier, and that changes the dynamic in a way that's less obvious at first, but more significant over time. Her relationship with Pimento ran on adrenaline and extremes. Her relationship with Jocelyn represents something slower and more consistent. And that's where Rosa starts to feel the strain. It pushes her. With Pimento, everything operated at the same level. There was no need to adjust, no need to slow down or speed up, no need to really explain anything. The relationship could exist in bursts, high stakes, high emotion, then distance again. It kind of fit the way Rosa already lived, and in a way the relationship was very Rosa. But relationships are meant to lie slightly beyond a person's periphery. A relationship is two rhythms trying to work together. With Jocelyn, it's a completely different rhythm. There's an expectation that Rosa will be there in a more ordinary, ongoing way, not just during intense moments, but in the spaces between them. Time together becomes something that has to be chosen and prioritized, not just something that happens when everything else falls away. And that's unfamiliar territory for her. Rosa has built her life around control and independence. She decides when people get access, how much they get, and for how long. Jocelyn disrupts that pattern simply by needing something more consistent than Rosa is used to giving, and she doesn't really know how to meet that because it requires a different kind of adjustment. It means letting someone in to the everyday parts of her life, not just the controlled or heightened ones. It means being present even when nothing dramatic is happening, even when there's no immediate reason to let her guard down. That's harder for Rosa than dealing with danger or conflict. Those situations are clear, defined, contained, and this isn't. And in the end, Rosa wasn't quite ready for this relationship. Or maybe Jocelyn wasn't quite ready. But either way, it shapes Rosa. It gives her a clearer understanding of what a stable relationship asks for, which is time, attention, and a willingness to let someone see you consistently. And even though Rosa doesn't fully meet that in the moment, she leaves the relationship with a better sense of what she's been asked for. It's no longer just about letting someone in, it's about what happens after that, whether she can stay open, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it disrupts the way she's used to living. That's something Rosa is still learning, and as someone who used to struggle with finding the right balance of vulnerability in a relationship, I enjoy watching her slowly develop in this way. It feels surprisingly relatable. At first, Rosa and Holt do not have an obvious relationship. There are no running jokes between them, no constant back and forth. For long stretches, it almost feels like nothing is happening at all, but something is happening, just at a level the show doesn't draw attention to. What they share is a kind of recognition. Both of them struggle with emotion, and it's not that they don't feel, it's that they've both learned to manage feelings with extreme caution, to regulate them, to keep them contained, either through structure or distance. And because of that, they exist slightly outside the emotional rhythm of the squad. They don't feel silence, they don't rush to explain themselves, and importantly, they don't judge each other for that. It creates a kind of safety that Rosa doesn't often get, especially from authority figures, and she responds to that even if she never says it outright. What I like about Rosa is that she doesn't crave his approval like most of the other characters. There is a coolness about their mutual respect for one another. Holt begins the series as someone who has trained himself into composure. His emotions are controlled through precision and discipline and through language, which I've talked about on a previous video. Rosa does something similar, but in a different direction. She controls access. She limits what people get to see in the first place. Different methods, but the same underlying instinct. Don't let too much through. And over time they both shift, and granted this shift is slight, but it is meaningful. Holt starts to let more emotion surface. He allows himself to care more visibly about the people around him. There are moments where the control loosens, just enough to reveal what's underneath. Rosa changes too, but in her own way. Over time she lets certain people in, she cares more than she would have at the beginning, and she becomes a little less rigid in how tightly she holds herself together. What matters is that neither of them forces that change in the other. They exist alongside each other as two people who understand the same difficulty, and in that space a shift appears. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is full of characters who express everything immediately. Feelings are spoken, explained, and often exaggerated. Conflict is loud, resolution is quick. Holt and Rosa offer something different to the culture of the show. They reveal what it looks like to struggle with emotion, to feel deeply but struggle to know what to do with all of that feeling. And more importantly, they show that this way of being doesn't need to be fixed, it just needs to be understood. I can't help but feel that Holt gives Rosa a kind of confidence in coming out. I'm not saying this was easy for her, because it was obviously one of the hardest things for her to do, but it's possible that this process would have taken a lot longer without Holt's example. Holt is one of the first people in the precinct who openly lives as himself. He is a gay black man who has spent his entire life navigating spaces that were not built for him, and yet he does so with immense dignity and self-possession. And Rosa sees that. She sees someone who has faced judgment, misunderstanding and rejection, and has still managed to build a life that is fully his own. And I think that matters, especially for someone like Rosa, who already struggles with emotional openness and personal exposure. Coming out is not just about sexuality. It's really about visibility. It's about allowing people access to a part of herself that she has kept guarded. It's one of the most vulnerable things she does in the entire series. What makes it so powerful is that the show handles it in a way that feels true to her character. Rosa doesn't suddenly become dramatically expressive. She doesn't make a speech that completely changes who she is. Throughout the process, she remains controlled and measured, and, more importantly, herself. But underneath that control there is fear. Fear of rejection, particularly from her family, fear of being misunderstood, and fear that once something is spoken out loud, it can no longer be protected in the same way. In that moment, Holt's existence within the world of the show feels incredibly important, because he is living proof that being fully yourself and being respected are not mutually exclusive. He has already walked through that fire in his own way. I imagine that gives Rosa something she rarely allows herself to take from others: reassurance. Holt represents the possibility that vulnerability does not always lead to weakness. Sometimes it leads to freedom. Personally, I like how Brooklyn Nine-Nine builds relevant and interesting characters regardless of their sexuality, and I do think that Rosa's bisexuality is significant because it adds another layer to what makes her feel so real. Whereas in many sitcoms, sexuality can become the defining feature of a character once it is revealed. For me, it's always too forced or too shallow. It can be rushed. Brooklyn Nine-Nine avoids that both with Holt and Rosa. Their sexuality is important, but it never replaces who they are. For a character who says so much by saying so little, telling the truth about who she is becomes one of the loudest moments in her story. Rosa's character arc is easy to miss because it isn't dramatic. She doesn't transform into someone openly expressive. She doesn't suddenly explain her entire past or become easy to read. And it's actually hard to know exactly how much she does change. But what we do know is that by the end, she trusts more people. And she trusts herself more, by which I mean she allows more honesty in certain moments, and she makes decisions that reflect a clearer understanding of herself. Rosa doesn't feel immediately relatable. She's more private than most people, more self-contained. Whereas many of us just want to be understood, Rosa avoids being understood. At first that creates distance, but if you look at the behaviour underneath it, it's not as unfamiliar as it first seems. Most of us hold something back, whether we are conscious of this or not. There are parts of ourselves we do not share freely, things we keep separate depending on where we are and who we're with. Not out of secrecy necessarily, but out of caution. It feels easier and safer, and more manageable. Rosa just commits to that instinct more fully. She draws a clear line and holds it, even when it would be simpler not to. And even if most people don't go that far, they recognise the impulse behind it. It's easy to call Rosa a badass, and she is. She's capable, physically intimidating, and rarely fazed by anything around her. Show Me Going, the 20th episode of season 5 comes to mind. But what stands out more is how little she tries to prove herself. There's no performance to it, no need to demonstrate strength for recognition. She just operates at a level that others come to accept over time. It's a version of confidence that doesn't ask for the spotlight, and I think that's what I love about her. Diaz never fully explains herself. She doesn't open every door for the audience or for her friends. She doesn't offer a complete version of who she is. She remains, to some extent, out of reach. And for one thing, it meant I had to approach this video essay a little bit differently to my others. But I've realised it's also what makes her work as a character. Rosa Diaz is the character who shows up, saves the day, and rides off into the sunset on her motorcycle without ever needing to be the hero. Thanks for watching, guys. For anyone who's new, I write reflective analyses like this one on lots of different characters, within sitcoms and outside of sitcoms. So if you like this kind of thing, why not subscribe? And if you like the video, a thumbs up will go a long way. Oh, and for anyone who missed it, in my previous video there's now an Instagram for the channel, link in description. Also, I'm working on a Q&A video in anticipation of a 10,000 subscriber special, and there's still time to ask a question if you have one. I've already got some great questions, but if there's something you really want to ask, whether it's about a theory, headcanon, a character, a show, an idea, or a question about my videos, then follow the link in the description. It will take you to a Q&A form. Anyway, thanks again. Hope you have a great week.